When I first started my reading journal, I thought that I was going to be using the same journal for maybe 7 or so years because I just didn't read all that much. But the funny thing is, in making a reading journal, I've actually come to read more, and I think I'm at the point where it warrants having a monthly setup. This is the first time I've done a monthly setup in my reading journal, so there were certainly some teething issues, like figuring out what I wanted to include in here, what might actually be helpful, especially considering what kind of layouts I will actually keep up with, because I don't want to make my reading journal a chore. I want it to be something that's fun, an additional thing to my reading habit, or at least the reading habit that I'm trying to build. This first page that we're making is effectively a media consumption calendar, so just a spot to note down when I was reading what, or because I also like to include TV shows, movies, and games in my reading journal anytime I watched or played those. This seems to be a pretty common element in other people's monthly reading journal setups, and I just thought it was a really good way to start off our January pages. Rather than doing all the lettering myself, I opted to just type everything up, print it off on sticker paper, cut it out, and stick it in. Which, because I get very particular about not wasting any of the sticker paper, I had to figure out ahead of time all of the titles I thought I would need in setting these pages up. By the time I'd printed it off, I'd already noted like 3 that I'd probably missed, but it's cool. I'll just add them to another sticker sheet when I next get to printing headers. In terms of how this calendar actually works though, you can see it's quite small, so I'm not going to be writing any titles in this calendar, but more so I'm just going to be highlighting the days where I was consuming certain pieces of media. So for instance, if I start reading a book on the 1st and I finish it on the 4th, I'll put a highlighted line between the 1st box of January and the 4th box. I'll also be adding the name of that book down in the red section that I have at the bottom, and probably labeling that highlight with a number just so I don't have to go and cram any titles into the small amount of space I have. This idea in particular I saw from my friend Monica's journal. She does the most gorgeous reading journal setups. We actually have a full flip through of 2 of her journals on the channel, and we're gonna have her journal from 2024 as a flip through as well, so make sure to stay tuned for that one. Now the nice part about the individual monthly reading journal setups is that because they have way less pages compared to my regular bullet journal, it means that I can use those little awkward pieces that I have left of rolls of PET tape. The decorative tape that I'm using in this setup in particular came from the washi tape shop, and I maybe only had about 40 centimeters of that tape left, which definitely would not be enough if I were trying to use it for a full monthly setup in my regular journal. I'm very excited about the fact that I will be able to use up those tapes that I really loved and enjoyed, but I just don't have enough of them to be able to use them in my everyday setups. Because I foresee the played list to be quite short compared to my watched or read, I decided to put some decoration in the lower right hand side of this page, and to balance that out I also added it to the top left. I love this tape, it's absolutely gorgeous. I'm so excited that I got to use it again. And the reason that I decided to go with a blue color palette in particular is because of the reading challenge that I'm going to be doing in January. More on that when we get to the page though. In terms of timing, from first touch of the pen to final erasings, the media consumption calendar took about 10 minutes. That time of course not including idea generation time or planning time, because it did take me a hot minute to plan these pages out because it's the first time I've done this. On the right hand side of this layout though, that's where I'm going to be planning the media I'll be consuming as related to my yearly challenges. These could be yearly goals that I've set for myself in terms of my reading, or it could be specific challenges that I'm trying to undertake. The ones that will be summarized here are the BBBC, or the Bujo Buddies Book Club, so which book we're reading for book club, the piece of media related to my 12x12, or 12 recommendations from friends and family, the Year of Goober Challenge, which is my personal reading challenge that I'm hosting through the Bujo Buddies Book Club. That one we also have a separate video on the channel if you want to get involved. And then the majority of the rest of them are my 25 in 25, so 25 things that I want to watch throughout the year, and 25 things that I want to read. Because there are 12 months in a year and I have 25 items, I'm aiming to consume at least 2 of those per month, and we will have to have at least 1 month where 3 things are consumed from each list, just to make sure that I actually get all 25 of them done. Now just because I'm sticking in the little covers or posters onto this layout does not necessarily mean they are actually the ones that are going to get done, with the exception of the Bujo Buddies Book Club. Not that I actually end up sticking anything in here, because we haven't actually selected our read at the time of recording this. The poll did go up today over in the Discord though, and I'm very eager to see what people select, but I don't want to call the race before it's over, so I'm gonna have to wait and see which one actually wins. If you wanted to get involved with our free online book club, there is also a link in the description box related to that one. Obviously there's just like a lot of goodness in the description box for this video. In terms of timing, this page took about 5 minutes to set setup, but that time didn't include me figuring out what I wanted to include for each of the challenges. The 12 recommendations from 12 friends and family members, that one wasn't so hard, it's just a list of 12 things and I got to pick one of them. But for everything else, it's like, oh look, an ocean of possibilities. Because as said, I don't like to waste my sticker paper. I like to, whenever I'm printing anything on there, max out the space in terms of how many covers I can fit on there. I spent an upsettingly large amount of time figuring out which ones I wanted to include. With this spread done though, we're flipping on over to where I'm going to be putting in the monthly challenge I'll be partaking in. While all of the other challenges that we had on that last layout were for my yearly challenges, so the yearly challenge of reading all the book club books, the yearly challenge of a year of Goober, the one that I'm going to be having on this spread is a monthly reading challenge just for January. This challenge is called TBRathon and it's hosted by Leandra, the TBR Zero, and from my understanding this is a reading challenge she hosts every January, with a couple of variations of how you can get involved. One of the styles is a bingo board, where she got a whole bunch of booktubers to put forward a prompt that people could use to select their reads. Another one is more like a game board style for snakes and ladders, so you roll a dice and then see which prompt you land on and read a book associated with that. But the one that I decided to go with was called Books of Paradise, which is effectively an island with a whole bunch of different locations that you don't have to read all of, and you don't have to read in any particular order, but each of those is tied to a reading prompt to help you select your books. I found this one really appealing because there's no expectation on how many of the locations you read for. You don't have to go in a set order, you can pick and choose which ones you want to do, and I figured that would be a nice way to enter the new year in terms of my reading. While she does offer a printable map and table to say what the locations are, the prompts associated with them, and give you the general lay of the land, I thought this was a great opportunity to draw a map into my journal. This was something that I super loved from my reading journal for 2024, and I didn't end up including a front of journal map in this notebook, so I thought I'd take the general style of her map and the locations that she put on there and draw that one out instead of using the printable. Was this time consuming? Yes. This page just by itself took about an hour to set up, that one not including the sketching in time, but technically speaking there wasn't a lot of planning time for this, mainly because I was just going off the map that Leandra put together, but trying to remember how to draw some of the map elements, that certainly took a second. When it comes to creating in my reading journal though, I don't mind taking a little bit of extra time. It's a fun creative process for me and it makes me more excited for reading challenges like this. You'll have seen that the first thing that I did when going and putting this layout onto the paper was using my dot marker to indicate the different places. I wanted these to kind of match the general color palette that we're going with for the setup, and standing out but not too much. I didn't want them to distract from the doodles, so I just went with the pale turquoise color of the Zig Clean Color dot marker. I love these dot markers. I use them in pretty much every setup because they are just so handy, and in this case they just acted as a nice way to highlight the letters for each of the locations. When it came to decorating the map, I did use some creative license compared to what we originally had on the printable, really just adding in some extra pieces around the outside of any of the core locations. These didn't get any kind of like location descriptor added to them or any prompt associated with them. It was really just for decoration. For instance, the little shipwreck that I put at the bottom, and then any of the little trees or tuffets of grass that I used to fill in any of the blank spaces. I love the creativity of this challenge. I'm very excited to get involved, especially because at this time of year where it's like busy season, everything's kind of ramping up for the end of year and stuff, I am definitely in a bit of a reading slump, and I find this kind of mood reader adjacent style of challenge to be just the kind of thing that will help me get back into reading as we enter the new year. If you wanted to get involved with this reading challenge or any of the other ones that I've mentioned in this video, of course, all of that information is in the description box, along with any of the materials I've used and links to related videos. That being said, I am also notoriously bad at forgetting to include things, so if there's anything I've mentioned and you're like, Jess, what the heck, where is the link? Just let me know in the comments and I will fix that right up for you. I apologize in advance. As said, this layout took about an hour to set up, just in terms of drawing our map in, but while it's all good and well to know where we're going and the letters associated with it, I do also need to know what those places are and the prompts that I have for my reading. That information I decided to summarize on the right hand side of the spread, just drawing in a table that tells me what letter the place is, what the place name is, and then a short description of the prompt. I tried to stay as true to the wording as I could from Leandra's table, but hers also takes up more lines than I had available, so I shortened those descriptors a little bit so I could look at the table, know exactly what the prompt was, but just have that information captured in less words. One of the things I did not consider when it came to setting up these layouts is how I'm going to capture recording which of the prompts I fulfilled with which book. In the table, I do have a column running down the right-hand side where I can check off any of the prompts that I read for, but I don't specifically have a layout set up at this stage which will record which books fulfilled each of those prompts. Certainly something I want to be mindful of in future, but it wasn't until like the end of this setup that I realized, oh, I probably should have included something about that. If you have any suggestions of how that information could be recorded, I would love to hear it. I was thinking something that has maybe the covers of the books that I read, but because at this stage I'm not too sure how many books I will actually end up reading. I'm not too sure if I wanted that to be an individual page or just a tip-in, or maybe a full spread if I, manage to read heaps in January. I'm not necessarily forecasting that I will read heaps in January, but I think that 3 books would be kind of nice. That's 1 book every 10 days, which feels fairly manageable, at least at this stage. For setting up this page though, this one took about 17 minutes, mainly because I had to keep on checking the wording that I needed to use for each of the prompts. And I again just used some more of that PET tape as the decoration for the page. Flipping on over though, and the next layout we're setting up is something I'm calling the pile of possibility. This term again came from Monica, so shout out to her for that one, but it's essentially like a TBR for the month. Or for me, it's like a TBR and a TBW and a TBP. To be read, to be watched, to be played. I don't think of this so much as a specific list of things I must get through or ones that I can only pick from when it comes to my reading, watching, and gaming, but more so just some things that are on my radar that I might want to do next. I might want to read it next, I might want to play, watch it next. That is not to say that I have to pick from these things. If something else catches my fancy throughout the month, I can totally go off in that direction if I want to. But rather than looking at my entire TBR or my entire list of things that I want to watch, this just helps me narrow my focus to some items that I've said, hey, this one in particular looks interesting for right now. I wanted a good variation in the items on this list, so I have 3 books, 2 movies, 2 TV shows, and 2 games. And I probably should have planned in advance how I wanted to do the decoration on this layout. Originally, I had planned just to do a decorative panel down the left-hand side, but after sticking in about 3.5 of the little covers, I decided I wanted to put the decoration behind them. I would definitely not recommend the process that I used for this, which was like trying to pull up the covers and stick the stickers underneath them, until I figured that it was probably just easier to cut out specific pieces of the PET decoration and stick it in the middle. And while I do like the end product, I know I could have had such an easier time with it if I had have been a little bit more mindful of how the decoration would come together by the end of setting the layout up. Despite all the kerfuffle, it actually only took me about 8 minutes, mainly because I didn't have to draw anything in, I'm using decorative stickers, I already had all of my little covers printed before I started, though again the time taken to figure out which items I wanted to include in terms of those books, movies, TV shows, and games, that took quite a while. I think it's also made a little bit trickier because I'm doing this so much in advance of January. I do think that in future I'll be setting these things up a little bit closer to the month in question, but I wanted to get this video out ahead of time just in case you wanted to nab any ideas from it. Of course, if you do ever take any ideas from my videos to apply to your own journal, let me know about it. It is always an exciting moment when something I've shared resonates with you enough to actually include it in your own journal. It's always a very special moment for me and I love to hear about it. After the pile of possibility was set up though, on the right hand side I wanted a space for our book club book for January. While I haven't quite decided how I'm going to be doing any kind of reading or media reviews in this journal, because I know that I want to change up my style compared to what I've previously been doing, I thought that having a spot in my monthly setup specifically for our book club book would be a good idea. On this one, I'm going to denote what the winner was, so sticking in a little cover for the book that wins. And I also wanted to stick in a smaller cover for whoever the runner-up was. One of the things that we're doing slightly differently in our book club this year compared to previously is that we're going to be compiling a list of questions that we want to talk about at the book club meeting. Previously, we've just had more general conversations surrounding the core pile rating system, but because all of the hosts aren't actually using core pile next year, it didn't really make a lot of sense to continue with that being the main way we style the meetings. Instead, we want to put together a list of questions that are a bit more specific to whichever book we read, and discuss those with our book club members. As mentioned before, at this stage we haven't selected what the book club winner is, so I can't stick in the cover for that or the runner-up, but for January it is Nettle and Bone going up against A Dreadful Splendor. I think both books sound great. I'm really eager to read either of them, so it'll be cool to see whichever one our book club members pick as the winner, and then think about the questions we can ask as related to that book. While I thought I was finished with this setup after about 5 minutes, I did decide to go and add in the read theme. Our book club host Rachel picked this one, being a book with both bones and flowers on the cover. It was really great getting to read through all of the suggestions that our book club members made, and I know that some of those are certainly being added to my TBR as well. Flipping on over though, the next layout I'm going to have is going to be a month in review for January. Now setting that up in the middle of December though feels a little bit silly, so at this stage I'm just sticking in a title to denote that that's what the spread is going to be used for. On here I'll have things like a general media breakdown, like how many books, how many movies, TV shows, all that. I'm going to be having statistics around different genres that I consumed, what format was I reading in, but I probably want to get a little bit closer to the end of January before I specifically set this layout up, mainly because I want to make each of the sections appropriately sized for the amount of media I do end up reading, watching, all of that. As can be expected, that layout did not take very long at all because it's just a title at this stage. So flipping back so that we can flip through, I'm very eager to see how I go with these layouts. As said, this is my first monthly reading journal setup. I haven't done something like this in my reading journal before, so I'm eager to get in, use these layouts, see how they work, if they work for me, and then make adjustments moving forward. Of course, if you want to see how I end up going with these layouts and any future iterations I make, be sure that you're subscribed to the channel. But as said, a lot of these layouts were inspired by the monthly setups my friend Monica does in her reading journal. Her reading journal, I swear, is literal goals, so if you wanted even more reading journal inspiration, then this is the next video to check out. Click or tap on that one and I'll see you over there.